Well, what better way for the family to stay warm in an extreme cold warning than with a good book at the library? The folks at the Thin Air Writers Festival, organized by Plume Winnipeg, have planned an entire kids festival for readers of all ages across the city. Charlene Diehl is the director for the Thin Air Kids Festival and joins us live in the Classic 107 studio to tell us more about this weekend's festivities. Good morning to you, Charlene, and happy I Love to Read Month.
Happy I Love to Read Month to you, too. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
So first of all, maybe you can tell us a bit about where the idea for a kids festival came from.
I can. Well, I have parented a couple of kids who are not kids anymore. So I have a lifelong love of kids' books. And when I was raising my own kids, realizing the kids' books that are around now are a lot more exciting than the kids' books that were around when I was young. And I've been at the festival for a long, long time. And we always had school programming. But I just wanted to move that school programming out of the squash of September when it's really hard for teachers and students because they're just trying to get their legs. And we're kind of piloting this idea of having a kids festival separate that really celebrates kids' books. Almost all of them are actually local writers this year, which is also very exciting. We've got a lot of really, really like world-class kids writers here, which is also pretty cool. I think often we don't really look around and know who is special in our own communities. Sometimes it's hard to see the stars when they're too up close. Anyway, we decided we were going to try a celebration of kids writing in I Love to Read Month. We weren't expecting that it would be like minus 30. But you're right. You know, one of the things about February and about, the winter cold is that you curl up and read books. And once you've read really great kids' books, you never want to stop reading really great kids' books. So, yeah, our party this weekend is for little ones, but also big ones, middle-sized ones, everybody in between.
Sure. Well, and you've got some of the books here that are going to be a part of this year's kids festival. What kind of titles are we looking at here, and what role do they play in this weekend's festivities?
Right. So we have a few things happening in schools at the moment. And then on the weekend, we have several events that are all public, and they target different age groups. So on Saturday morning, we are meeting at the Bill and Helen Norrie Library, which is on Grant. It's actually not. It's on
like
Poseidon
corner
Bay,
of Grant and Cambridge there, yes.
It's right in that. It's just a little bit further out from McNally. And the very wonderful Linda Trin will be there. She's got this. She writes for sort of early readers. And she's sharing one of the most recent books from her Nguyen Kids series. And as you can see, look at these delightful little
They look
beings.
so happy.
I know. So these Nguyen Kids are sleuths. And the book is look at this. This is
beautiful illustrations.
Exactly. Great illustrations. The printing is large, so kids who are just figuring out how to read can actually get through a chapter book with a lot of confidence because they're not completely overwhelmed by how much is on a page. This is this is good strategy, right?
Yeah.
For young readers. So she writes very exciting stories about these kids who are exploring their own heritage. So it's which is also Linda's thing, and she's going to be sort of talking about journeys because the kids in this book take a journey back to Vietnam to visit their grandparents, and they learn a little bit about different cultural customs. And so Linda and her wonderful daughter are going to be helping kids and families make Vietnamese fans.
Wow!
After as part of this little gathering, so that's a very lighthearted, sort of playful experience of books and sort of the feel of being in story. Really, to me, ultimately everything is about story. And you and I were talking a little bit before we came on air about how voice and language work. And I think several of the writers and thinkers that really matter to me have talked about how story is basically the essence of everything that we do.
Yeah.
You know, a good joke is a good story, just in micro form.
Right.
A picture book, even if there's no words, is about its story. And we tell stories about our own, you know, our day.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
our transactions with people are all ultimately storytelling. And I think that it's so critical that we support kids not only to learn to read because their capacity to read words is important, like literacy is a very essential skill to get by on in the world, but also we just have to support and encourage kids to encounter different kinds of stories, because different stories allow kids to understand different perspectives, the interiors of other people, correct information. I mean, books deliver a lot of things.
Of course.
And for, I think every parent who has little kids knows how important it is that their kid learns to read. The best thing you can do for your kid, research says, is read to them. If you want them to be doing well in math in grade 10, read to them when they're little. You know, just read to them.
You're talking
and
about
encourage them.
Yeah, you're talking about these different communities and these different experiences that these kids who visit the Thin Air Kids Festival this weekend will get exposed to. You talk about Linda Trin's book as an example. I also see a wonderful book right at the bottom of this rather large pile that you've brought here today, which is fantastic, called It's Powwow Time.
Isn't this beautiful?
Another beautiful illustrations, a book by Martha Troyan.
Yep. And she's also a Winnipegger, and this is her first published book. It's beautiful. I mean, the art is gorgeous. And it's also about a little person sort of discovering their own, you know, the cultural language of his family and a community. And I think these ways for people who are not Vietnamese or not Indigenous, it's equally exciting and important for those of us who are not from those communities to have this invitation. It's like someone opens the door and invites us in, and we all get to experience like another way of being and other sets of values and what creates the texture and excitement in other cultures.
There's, in addition to readings happening at different libraries this weekend, there's also other ways for kids to engage in actually creating their own works of literature. Tell us a bit more about the workshops for the aspiring young writers that are taking place in the city.
To. Yeah. So there's two of them. And one is at the Millennium Library on Saturday afternoon. And you can find all this information. We can talk maybe about that at the end.
Yes, indeed.
But you have to register for this one through the library. And it's a graphic novel workshop called Finding Closure. And it's being hosted or directed by Jen Storm and Alice R.L., who are both Indigenous artists and writers. And they do 1,000 other things too. And it's actually a hands-on workshop about graphic novel making. And graphic novels have exploded into our consciousness as yet another kind of hybrid way of making stories. And for those people who may not have seen what a graphic novel looks like, well, it looks. I'll just open this beautiful page. Like it looks like a little bit like the comic books of my childhood.
Yeah.
But they're much more dense and they're much deeper.
You're not seeing like some sort of iteration of an onomatopoeia or something like that. There's not big like Batman and Robin kapow on the thing, but there is a way. It's just another way to engage in rich storytelling.
Very rich storytelling, and for a lot of storytellers, they don't necessarily have a clear distinction between their visual sense of story and their language sense of story. So this is a really, really interesting combination of those art forms. And a lot of kids are reading graphic novels. As a matter of fact, my son, who had a very hard time learning to read, got into reading through graphic novels because there's not so much language to decode.
Right.
And if you have some decoding issues like dyslexia or whatever, it can be much less terrifying.
Yeah.
But also there's lots of kids who are making art and who are making little books. So this one lets you go into a space with people who actually do this. Alice is the colorist for this particular book, and Jen is the writer, storyteller for this particular book, Little Moons. A gorgeous book, which goes into some very difficult territory. So this is not for, and I'll just say as an aside, I think often we underestimate the depth and the wisdom of kids. You talk down to kids at your peril. Kids know far more than you think they know. And by the time kids are getting into the teen zone, and this is a teen workshop, both of our workshops are for teen creators, they're dealing with a very heavy world. They are dealing with very big issues, and they need ways to express themselves. So we're very excited about this one. Really fabulous leaders in this one. And the second workshop is on Sunday afternoon at the McNally Community Classroom.
Right, yes.
And it's being led by Mark Morton, who's written this very chunky novel. It's a dystopian novel about not too distant future where everyone's brains are controlled by headmasters. It's called headmasters. So it's a workshop about writing dystopian fiction, and there's been a real huge flurry of dystopian fiction and movies over the last 10 years, probably. Right. That's one of the cool things about reading for a festival every year is you get to see these kind of patterns. So dystopian fiction is just really pushed up, especially in the sort of teen YA and also adult writing zone. So we're grabbing Mark at just the right time. We also have him doing a reading at Raven's End on Saturday night. That one is for teens and adults. I mean, it's pretty mature content. And Raven's End is this really cool horror bookshop on for a little ways out Portage Avenue.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, going to be a kind of chance for us to hear him read from the book, and like all of us, not just the teens.
So much going on this weekend, and you're still figuring out the full potential, it sounds like, for what this festival can be.
Test driving.
Yeah. Where do you hope to see this festival in the next few years? How do you hope that it
I hope
takes shape?
that it will kind of get its legs. There's no shortage of really great books for kids, and I would like our community to be able to find some of those books and, get kids excited. As I was saying to you before we came on air, reading, I think all of us, even those of us who are really avid readers, are having a harder time reading. It's just like attention span is very chopped up, and the demands on our time are it's heavy.
Yeah.
And I think maybe also coming out of the pandemic, I think there's a certain kind of, I don't know, like emotional exhaustion that makes reading a little bit tricky. But I think we really have to support our kids to learn to read, and also to feel the capacity to engage in different kinds of stories. These kids are our future, right? Yeah. We must invest in our kids in order for us all to keep this raft afloat. It's a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
So I would love to see a really lively gathering every year where the public can access great events that are directed for kids, and kids can feel like they're the center of the world for a bit.
Absolutely. More information about all of these events, by the way, can be found at thinairwinnipeg.ca.
Right.
And all these events, I understand, are free
They
as
are
well.
All free.
Excellent. You can find that once again.
That's the best price, don't you think?
I agree. thinairwinnipeg.ca is the place to learn about all of these events taking place for the Thin Air Kids Festival beginning tomorrow with its events. We're joined by the director of the Thin Air Kids Festival live in the Classic 107 studios this morning, Charlene Diehl. Thank you so much for taking the time.
I'm so glad you called. I'm really delighted to be here.